The important thing is not to stop questioning. Curiosity has its own reason for existence. That's Einstein. And it feels really fitting for what we're diving into today. You think something like voter registration is, well, pretty straightforward, right? Fill a form, maybe show an ID, done.
Seems simple enough on the surface.
But what if that simple process suddenly cracks open this huge, complex discussion about, well, citizenship itself,
Yeah.
about identity, and what it really means to participate in India's democracy?
That's exactly where we are. We're looking closely at a discussion sparked by an article in the print. It's all about the Election Commission of India, the ECI, doing a special intensive revision of electoral rolls over in Bihar. And our mission today really is to unpack that, to look at the details, the facts, the nuances, and figure out the wider implications. This isn't just some local news item.
Right.
For you listening, especially if you're prepping for UPSC mains current affairs or even prelims, this is highly relevant. And honestly, it's crucial for anyone wanting a deeper understanding of governance and citizenship in India today.
Okay, let's unpack this then. So the ECI kicks off this special intensive revision in Bihar. And the first thing that jumps out is, wow, this is the first time they've done this kind of exercise there since 2003?
Yeah, over 20 years. That's a long gap.
Exactly. And the ECI points to Article 326 of the Constitution as the reason. That's the article saying elections are based on adult suffrage. And here's the key bit. Every person who is a citizen of India and who is not less than 18 years of age shall be entitled to be registered as a voter.
Citizen of India.
That phrase, citizen of India, seems to be right at the heart of this whole thing.
And what's fascinating, or maybe concerning, depending on your view, is how this revision, happening after such a long time, has immediately sparked these major questions.
Right.
It's not just about how they're doing the revision, the technical side. It's hitting at the potential impact on people's actual right to vote. This focus on proving you're a citizen of India feels, well, it feels new in this context.
So why the sudden emphasis after decades?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? For you, whether you're deep into constitutional law for UPSC or just an engaged citizen, it makes you ask, why this focus on citizenship proof now? What's the goal behind this particularly rigorous process?
Which brings us neatly to the documents. The ECI put out what they called an indicative list of 11 documents for voters in Bihar.
Indicative, yeah.
And some of them are quite specific. Things like, okay, birth certificate, matriculation certificate, fine. But then permanent residence certificate, forest rights certificate, caste certificate, family register.
Some quite niche documents in there.
And get this, even an identity card or pension payment order, but only if it was issued to a government employee or pensioner before July 1st, 1987. Very specific.
Extremely specific date there.
But here's the real kicker, the thing that made everyone sit up. What's not on that list?
Aadhaar.
Aadhaar. And even your existing voter ID card.
Yeah.
The very card issued by the ECI itself.
Exactly. Those two omissions, Aadhaar and the existing EPIC card, became huge sticking points. It led to petitions being filed in the Supreme Court.
Makes sense.
The ECI told the court pretty bluntly, Aadhaar cannot be accepted as a proof of citizenship. And to be fair, other courts have said similar things before about Aadhaar.
Okay.
But then during the hearing, Justice Troymalia Bakshi made this really sharp observation. He basically said to the ECI, look, all the documents you have listed are related to identity. None of these illustrative documents are by themselves proof of citizenship.
Wow. So the court itself is pointing out the contradiction.
Precisely. It highlights this paradox. The ECI says the goal is authenticating citizenship, but the documents they're asking for are mainly identity proofs, not citizenship proofs per se.
So, okay, this leads to the big question, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Is there actually any specific document under the Citizenship Act, the 1955 one, that definitively says this person is an Indian citizen, full stop?
You've nailed the central problem. Based on the experts cited in the print article, the answer seems to be, well, mostly no. Yeah. Ashok Lavasa, a former election commissioner, is quoted saying there's no clear document like that under the Act. A lawyer involved in the Supreme Court case put it even more plainly. None of the documents, except the passport, is proof of citizenship. And they stressed there's no national citizenship card in India. It really does expose a sort of gap in how we officially document citizenship for everyday purposes.
What about the passport then? The lawyer mentioned that.
Right. The passport is interesting. It is accepted as proof you're an Indian citizen, but the article clarifies that's kind of ancillary, a side effect of its main job as a travel document.
Ah, I see.
It works as proof because generally only Indian citizens get an Indian passport for travel, but it wasn't designed solely to be the go-to citizenship proof for things like voter registration.
Okay, that distinction's important.
Yeah.
So how do people become citizens under the 1955 Act?
Yeah.
There are different ways, right?
Yep, 4 main routes outlined in the Act: by birth, by descent, by registration, and by naturalization.
Can you give us the quick version of each?
Sure. By birth is basically being born in India, subject to certain conditions over time. By descent is for those born outside India but to Indian parents. By registration is often for people of Indian origin living abroad or people married to Indian citizens. And by naturalization is the path for foreigners who've lived in India long enough and meet the criteria to apply.
Got it. Birth, descent, registration, naturalization.
And here's where it gets really crucial, connecting back to the document issue. Aman Wadud, a lawyer from Guwahati who deals a lot with citizenship cases, says very clearly, there is nothing called a citizenship certificate for those who are citizens of India since the commencement of the Constitution or their descendants.
So for the vast majority of Indians.
Exactly. He says there is also no standalone document for Indian citizens to prove their citizenship. The people who do get specific citizenship certificates are typically those who acquire it later through naturalization, registration, descent, or under the CAA. The 1955 Act only talks about certificates in those contexts. And even the citizenship rules from 2009 only lay out application forms for citizenship by descent, registration, and naturalization, not by birth. So the legal framework itself doesn't seem set up to issue a specific citizenship document to someone who's a citizen simply by being born here.
That's actually quite mind-boggling. So most citizens don't have a specific paper proving their citizenship status, yet in Bihar, they're suddenly being asked to produce one from a list of documents that, as Justice Bakshi pointed out, don't really prove citizenship anyway.
That's the core of the difficulty, yes.
And this makes the ECI's stance on Aadhaar seem even more, let's say, complex. Because didn't the ECI itself see a role for Aadhaar not too long ago? I remember their own manual from just last year, March 2023.
The manual for electoral rolls.
It apparently lists Aadhaar as an acceptable document to attach with Form 6. That's the form for new voters or people changing address. And it even says Aadhaar can be proof of both age and ordinary residence.
Yes, that's correct. It's listed there for those specific purposes on Form 6.
And wasn't there that big pushback in 2015, the NER PAP program, National Electoral Roll Purification and Authentication Program?
Ah, yes, NER PAP.
The whole idea then it was to link voter IDs, the EPIC cards, with Aadhaar numbers, mobile numbers, email, precisely to get an error-free and authenticated electoral roll.
They seemed quite keen on using Aadhaar for authentication back then.
They were. NEROP was a major initiative, but it got stopped in its tracks.
Why? What happened?
The Supreme Court happened. On August 11, 2015, the court passed an interim order in cases challenging the whole Aadhaar scheme. That order basically said Aadhaar couldn't be mandatory for getting benefits, and its use was restricted at that time, mainly to the PDS system and LPG subsidies.
Ah, okay, so that court order forced the ECI's hand.
Effectively, yes. The ECI had to suspend the collection and linking of Aadhaar numbers under NERPAP because of that ruling.
But the story doesn't end there, does it? Aadhaar seems to have crept back in. It has, but in a different way. If you connect the dots, fast forward to 2021. The government, actually acting on a recommendation from the ECI, amended the Representation of People Act.
Okay.
And this introduced a new form, Form 6B. This form is specifically for the voluntary collection of Aadhaar numbers from people already on the electoral roll for authentication purposes.
Voluntary. That's the key word.
Exactly. So Aadhaar went from being central to NERPAP to being restricted by the court, and now it's back in the picture. But on a voluntary basis for authentication, its role has definitely evolved.
This whole situation, though, the Bihar revision, the document list, the Aadhaar exclusion, it leads to a pretty fundamental concern, doesn't it? Is the ECI sort of stepping into the territory of deciding who is and isn't a citizen? Because my understanding, and I think this is crucial for listeners, especially the UPSC folks, is that determining citizenship is usually the job of the Ministry of Home Affairs, the MHA, right? Not the Election Commission.
That's precisely the legal point being argued very forcefully. Senior advocate Kapil Sibal, arguing in the Supreme Court, stated flatly that only the government of India, through the MHA, can actually contest someone's citizenship. An ECI official doesn't have that authority.
Okay.
And PDT Akery, a constitutional expert, backed this up, saying the Supreme Court has previously ruled that checking citizenship status is not the remit of the Election Commission.
So there's precedent.
Yes. And Justice Suhanshu Dhulia, during that same hearing, put it very sharply to the ECI's lawyer. But citizenship is an issue to be determined not by the Election Commission of India, but by the MHA. Clear as day.
Wow.
Former EC Lavasa also made the point that different laws have their own administrative structures. Every act has its own administrative mechanism, he said, implying the Citizenship Act is handled by the MHA, the Representation of People Act by the ECI. Keep the lanes separate.
So, okay, Article 326 does say citizen of India is a requirement to vote. The ECI wanting to ensure eligibility is, well, understandable, genuine as the article puts it. But the question remains, why this intense focus now, challenging what seems to be a long-standing presumption that a person is a citizen when they're already on the rolls?
Exactly. Why disrupt that presumption in this particular way at this particular time?
And especially with this list of 11 documents. What strikes you about the practical problems with actually using that list in Bihar?
Well, several big issues jump out. PDT Akery found it baffling that the ECI wasn't even accepting existing voter ID cards. He basically asked, what's the point of the ECI issuing these cards if they don't trust them later?
Good point. Almost self-defeating.
Right. And then you have the petition from Manoj Kumarja, the Rajya Sabha MP. He pointed to government surveys showing that only a tiny fraction, a negligible part of Bihar's population actually possesses many of these documents, like birth certificates, passports, permanent residence certificates.
So for many people, getting these documents might be impossible or extremely difficult.
That seems to be the concern. Plus, some documents on the list, like anything related to the NRC or even the family register concept, just don't apply to Bihar at all. So the list itself feels poorly tailored, maybe even arbitrary, for the specific context of Bihar.
It sounds like a recipe for confusion and potentially excluding eligible voters simply because they can't produce these specific, sometimes obscure documents.
That's the fear being expressed.
Stepping back a bit, how did these revisions used to happen? Intense revisions aren't new, right? You mentioned they go way back.
Oh yeah, long history. Even before the ECI itself was formally set up. There's an example from the very first rolls in 1947 where they had issues because many women were just listed as wife of or mother of someone, not by their own names. Those had to be corrected.
So what was the standard process back then, say in the 60s?
According to former EC Lavasa, it was actually very simple. Officials would go house to house. The head of the household would list the residents eligible to vote. Then a draft roll was published. The key assumption was transparency and public scrutiny. If someone saw a name on the list who shouldn't be there, they could object.
Ah, so the burden was on the objector.
Crucially, yes. Lavasa emphasizes that in the past, it is on the objector to prove the claim that a listed person isn't eligible. The default was, if you're on the list, you're presumed eligible unless proven otherwise.
Which sounds completely different from what's happening now in Bihar.
It's a fundamental shift. The article argues that in this Bihar exercise, the burden of proof of citizenship has been placed on the already enrolled voters. That's a massive change in approach.
So summing this up, this Bihar electoral roll revision really throws into sharp relief this major tension, doesn't it? You've got the ECI's constitutional job to ensure only eligible citizens vote, colliding head-on with the messy reality of proving Indian citizenship, especially since, as we discussed, there isn't one single document most people have for that. And all this bumps up against the established role of the Ministry of Home Affairs as the authority on citizenship itself.
Absolutely. The core insight, I think, is that our system is facing a kind of foundational paradox. How do you verify citizenship for voting when there's no universal, dedicated citizenship document? It ends up potentially putting a huge, maybe unintended burden on ordinary citizens.
Right.
And the key takeaway for you listening, this isn't just the story about Bihar. It really shines a light on these deep administrative and constitutional questions that affect the whole country's democracy. Understanding this stuff makes you a much more informed citizen. And for UPSC aspirants, well, this is prime material: current affairs, constitutional law, governance issues all rolled into one.
So here's a final thought to leave you with, something to really chew on. In today's India, increasingly digital, how do we square the need for accurate voter lists with the legal framework we actually have around citizenship and identity, especially when the Supreme Court itself talks about document starvation? The reality that many people just don't have the specific papers authorities sometimes demand.
That's the challenge.
What's the right balance? How do we protect every eligible citizen's fundamental right to vote, while still having a credible process for verifying eligibility, especially citizenship, in such a huge and diverse country? It's a complex question with no easy answers.
Definitely something worth pondering.
Indeed. If you have thoughts or questions on this, please do engage with us, like, subscribe, leave a comment. We appreciate you joining us for this deep dive.